Something extraordinary happened just a few hours ago that is going to change everything you thought you knew about the person who has been silently occupying your thoughts day after day. While you were going about your ordinary life, completely unaware of what was unfolding in a conversation happening somewhere else. Someone you care about deeply was sitting across from a trusted friend, and your name suddenly escaped from their lips in a way that carried so much weight that the very air in the room seemed to shift. This was not a casual mention, not a passing reference in some mundane story, but a confession so raw and vulnerable that it left the person listening completely stunned into silence. The universe has been holding its breath, waiting for this precise moment when the truth would finally surface. And now that it has emerged from the shadows where it has been hiding for far too long, everything is about to transform in ways you cannot yet imagine. You may have noticed certain signs recently, small disturbances in the pattern of your daily existence that seemed insignificant at the time, but were actually the universe trying to prepare you for what was coming. Perhaps you woke up in the middle of the night with their face inexplicably vivid in your mind. Or maybe you felt an unexplained pull to check your phone, hoping to see their name appear on your screen. Or possibly you experienced that strange sensation in your chest, like something important was about to happen, even though you had no logical reason to feel that way. What I'm about to reveal to you is not just another story about hidden feelings or unspoken attraction. This is a divine intervention orchestrated by forces beyond our understanding, to bring two souls who have been dancing around each other in painful uncertainty finally into alignment. The person who has been maintaining what seemed like emotional distance from you, who appeared so calm and collected on the surface, as if nothing deeper was stirring beneath, has finally reached a breaking point where the truth could no longer be contained. Picture the scene exactly as it unfolded. They were sitting in a quiet space with someone they trust completely, someone who would never betray their confidence. And the conversation had started innocently enough about everyday matters. But then something shifted. You could see it in the way their hands suddenly gripped the edge of the table, in how their voice dropped to almost a whisper, as if speaking any louder would make the words too real to take back. Their eyes filled with an emotion so intense that it became impossible to hide. And when they finally spoke your name, it came out wrapped in years of suppressed longing and fear and hope, all tangled together in a sound that barely resembled normal speech. The friend sitting across from them immediately recognized that something profound was happening. This was not going to be a light conversation about casual feelings. And so they leaned in closer and asked the question that opened the floodgates. What is really going on with you and this person? The response that followed was nothing short of a complete unburdening of a soul that had been carrying an impossibly heavy secret for months, or perhaps even years. They began speaking faster and faster, as if once the dam had broken, there was no way to stop the flood of truth from pouring out. They talked about how every single time they see you, their entire body responds in ways they cannot control, how their heart starts racing so fast they worry you might somehow hear it pounding in their chest, how they have to consciously remind themselves to breathe normally, because being near you makes them forget how to do even the most basic things. They confessed that your smile haunts them in the quiet moments when they are alone, appearing unbidden in their mind and bringing with it a warmth that spreads through their entire being, even though you are nowhere near. But the confession went even deeper into territory that will absolutely take your breath away when you hear it. They admitted that the distance you have felt between you lately, those moments when they seemed cold or distracted or unwilling to engage as deeply as they once did, had nothing whatsoever to do with losing interest in you. In fact, the truth was the complete opposite of what you probably assumed during all those times when you wondered if you had done something wrong or if they were pulling away because their feelings had changed. They explained that every time they created space between you, every time they cut a conversation short or avoided your eyes or made excuses to leave early, It was because they were overwhelmed by how much they felt and terrified that if they stayed in your presence one moment longer, they would lose control and reveal everything before they were ready. They have been building walls not to keep you out permanently, but to protect themselves from the vulnerability of loving someone so deeply that it threatens to completely upend their carefully constructed sense of safety and control. The friend listening to this confession asked the most important question: why now? Why choose this moment to finally speak these truths out loud after keeping them locked inside for so long? The answer revealed something about the workings of divine timing that should make you pay very close attention to what is happening right now in this precise moment of your life. They explained that something had shifted in them recently, a dream perhaps, or a sudden realization while staring out a window at dawn, something that made them understand with crystal clarity that they could not continue living in this state of silent suffering. They described feeling as though they were watching their own life from outside their body, seeing themselves as an elderly person looking back with profound regret at all the words left unspoken and all the chances never taken. That vision shook them so deeply that they knew they had no choice but to begin the process of bringing their truth into the light, even if doing so felt terrifying beyond measure. And so they sat down with this trusted friend and began to speak, and once they started, they found they could not stop until every last piece of truth had been laid bare on the table between them. Now here is where the story takes a turn that will send shivers down your spine, because it reveals the hand of something greater than mere coincidence at work in your situation. At the exact moment when this person was pouring out their heart about you to someone else, you were also thinking about them, perhaps even contemplating whether you should reach out and say something about your own feelings. This synchronicity is not random chaos pretending to be meaningful. It is the universe itself arranging circumstances so that two people who have been trapped in parallel states of longing can finally find their way to each other. The angels who watch over matters of the heart have been working behind the scenes for weeks or months, gently pushing both of you toward this moment of revelation, placing certain thoughts in your mind, creating certain circumstances that force you to confront what you have been avoiding. They understand what you may not yet fully grasp, which is that the time for hiding and pretending and protecting yourselves from potential pain has come to an end. And the time for courage and honesty and radical vulnerability has arrived, whether you feel ready for it or not. The person who confessed their feelings for you also revealed something that might surprise you about all those little moments you have shared together. Moments you may have dismissed as insignificant, but which they have been treasuring like precious gems stored away in a secret place. They talked about a conversation you had once that lasted maybe 7 or 8 minutes in some unremarkable location. Just ordinary words exchanged about ordinary things. But they have replayed that conversation in their mind dozens of times since then, analyzing every word you spoke, every expression that crossed your face, every subtle shift in your tone of voice. They mentioned a text message you sent them one evening when you had no idea they were feeling particularly low. Just a simple message, asking how they were doing or sharing something you thought might make them smile. And that message became a lifeline they held onto for days afterward, reading it over and over whenever doubt or loneliness threatened to overwhelm them. They confessed that they notice everything about you, things you do not even realize you are doing. Like the way you always seem to position yourself near them when you're in the same room, or how you remember small details they mentioned in passing weeks ago, or the specific way you say their name that is somehow different from how you say anyone else's name. What makes this confession so extraordinarily powerful is that it exposes how two people can be living through the exact same emotional experience without ever realizing that the other person is right there with them in it. While you have been lying awake at night wondering if what you feel is one-sided and foolish, they have been lying awake in their own bed, wrestling with exactly the same questions. While you have been looking for signs in their behavior to tell you whether it is safe to hope, They have been doing precisely the same thing with your behavior. And both of you have been too afraid to simply speak plainly and ask for what you really want. This dance of hesitation and fear could have continued indefinitely. Both of you slowly growing more distant as the weight of unspoken feelings created an invisible barrier between you. But divine intervention has stepped in to break the cycle by ensuring that you discovered their confession in a way that gives you time to process and prepare your own response. Can I pause here for just a moment to speak directly to your heart, because I need you to understand something crucial about why this message has found you today. You are not here by accident, scrolling through content mindlessly and happening upon these words randomly. Your soul called out for guidance about this exact situation you are in, and the universe answered by placing this message directly in your path at precisely the moment when you needed to hear it most. If everything I have described so far resonates with you so deeply that you feel it in your chest like a physical sensation, if you recognize your own story in these words, even though I have never met you and know nothing about your specific circumstances, then I want you to do something that matters. I want you to become part of a community of brave souls who refuse to settle for half-lived emotional lives. People who understand that real love requires real courage. Subscribe to this channel not because it helps me, but because it helps you. Because you deserve to have a space where your truth is honored and your struggles are understood. And down in the comments below this video, I want you to tell your story. Share what you are going through right now. Describe the person who occupies your thoughts and what stops you from telling them how you really feel. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to read today to find the courage to take their own step toward love. We are all connected in this grand human adventure of seeking authentic connection. And by sharing our experiences, we create a web of courage and hope that can support each of us through our hardest moments. The confession continued to unfold in ways that revealed even more layers of complexity and depth to what this person has been feeling. They spoke about how knowing you has changed them in fundamental ways they are only beginning to understand. How they find themselves thinking differently about the future now that you exist in their world. How they catch themselves smiling at random moments simply because a memory of you has surfaced unbidden. They talked about the specific torture of seeing you happy with other people and wondering if they have already missed their chance. If their hesitation has opened a door for someone else to claim the place in your life that they desperately wish was theirs. They admitted to checking your social media with an obsessive frequency that embarrasses them, looking for clues about your emotional availability, trying to decode every photo and every comment to understand whether you might be interested in someone else. But perhaps the most heartbreaking part of their confession was when they tried to explain why they have seemed distant or cold at certain moments when you might have expected warmth and openness. They wanted you to understand that every single time they appeared uninterested or distracted or eager to end a conversation, it was actually because they were feeling the complete opposite. So overwhelmed by emotion in your presence that they had to create artificial distance to avoid revealing too much too soon. Every time they looked away when your eyes met, it was not indifference, but fear that you would somehow read in their gaze all the feelings they were desperately trying to keep hidden. Every time they made an excuse to leave when things were starting to get more personal between you. It was not because they were bored, but because they could feel their defenses crumbling and knew they needed to escape before they said something they could not take back. Understanding this should completely reframe how you have been interpreting their behavior all this time, turning what looked like rejection or lack of interest into its opposite, a level of feeling so intense that it became necessary to manage it through distance. The friend who was receiving this confession made an observation that cut right to the heart of the matter. Everything being described sounded less like a crush or a passing attraction, and much more like genuine love. The kind that changes a person from the inside out and refuses to be ignored or diminished, no matter how hard you try. At hearing their feelings named so directly, the person broke down completely, tears streaming down their face, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of having someone else recognize and validate what they had been experiencing alone for so long. Yes, they admitted through their tears it was love, real love, that terrified them precisely because it was real and powerful enough to alter the entire course of their life. They loved the way you see the world with such unique perspective. Your kindness that never slides into weakness but maintains its strength even in gentleness. Your laugh that has the power to transform any dark room into a space filled with light and possibility. They loved your imperfections as much as your strengths, because those imperfections made you human and real, rather than some impossible ideal they had constructed in their imagination. But beyond all these specific details, what they loved most was who they became when they were with you, or even just when they thought about you. In your presence, they felt permission to be more authentic, less concerned with maintaining the various masks they usually wore to navigate safely through the world. You made them feel that it was safe to be vulnerable, that showing their emotional scars would not make them less worthy of love, but would actually make them more beautiful in their humanity. This sense of emotional safety was something they had never experienced with anyone else, and it was precisely this that made their feelings for you both terrifying and precious in equal measure. They knew that if they lost this connection, they would be losing far more than a potential romantic relationship. They would be losing that rare and magnificent feeling of being truly seen and accepted for who they really are beneath all the protective layers they show to the rest of the world. The conversation eventually arrived at the question that changes everything. What are you going to do now with all these feelings that are no longer contained? The friend asked this gently but firmly, knowing that at some point confession must give way to decision, truth must lead to action, and feelings must be either expressed to the person they concern or consciously released. The response was exactly what you might expect from someone standing at the edge of a cliff, deciding whether to jump, a mixture of determination and terror, hope and dread, readiness and hesitation, all swirling together in a state of profound uncertainty. They said they knew they could not continue living in this suspended state indefinitely, that something had to change, but they were genuinely unsure about the best path forward. Should they approach you directly and lay all their cards on the table, risking rejection but at least gaining clarity? Should they try to create more opportunities to spend time with you and hope that closeness might lead naturally to a moment where confession feels safe? Should they wait for a sign from you that might indicate whether their feelings could possibly be reciprocated before making themselves vulnerable? What the friend said in response to these questions contained wisdom that applies not just to their situation but to yours as well. Because you are now standing at your own crossroads, facing your own decision about what to do with the knowledge you have just received. The friend explained that fear is not a reason to stay silent. Fear is actually a compass pointing toward what matters most, because we only fear losing things we truly value. The friend said that keeping feelings hidden might feel safer in the short term, but it guarantees long-term suffering. Because unexpressed truth does not simply disappear. It festers and grows heavier and eventually poisons the very connection it was meant to protect. The friend pointed out that even if the conversation is difficult and the outcome uncertain and the possibility of rejection very real, the act of speaking truth with courage is itself transformative, regardless of how the other person responds. It teaches you that you are capable of more bravery than you knew, that vulnerability is not weakness, but actually the purest form of strength. And here is what the heavens want you to understand about your own situation right now. This revelation has come to you not to torture you with knowledge you do not know how to use, but to give you the advantage you needed to act with confidence. You now know something precious that you did not know before. You know that your feelings might not be one-sided after all. You know that the distance you have felt was not what it appeared to be. You know that someone is waiting on the other side of their own fear, hoping desperately that you might take the first step so they do not have to. The question now is not whether something needs to happen, but what you are going to do about it, how you are going to respond to this divine gift of information that has been placed in your hands. Will you wait for them to come to you, even though you now know they are paralyzed by the same fears that have been holding you back? Will you continue the dance of hesitation and uncertainty now that you know the truth about what is really happening beneath the surface? Or will you find within yourself the courage to bridge the gap between you, to speak your own truth clearly and honestly, to create the opening that will allow both of you to step out of hiding and into the light of authentic connection? The path forward is not without risk. Nothing worth having ever is. But the risk of speaking is so much smaller than the risk of remaining silent and watching this opportunity slip away, because neither of you could find the courage to be vulnerable first. Consider what it would mean to let this moment pass unused, to know what you now know and still choose to do nothing with that knowledge. Imagine yourself months or years from now looking back at this exact moment and wondering what might have happened if you had been brave enough to act when the universe opened a door for you. That version of yourself in the future would give anything to come back to this moment and make a different choice, to take the chance that present you is too afraid to take. Do not let fear rob you of something beautiful before you even know what it could become. The courage you need is already inside you. It has been there all along, waiting for a moment worthy of it. And this is that moment. Every time you have chosen to remain open to love, despite past hurts, every time you have protected and nurtured your feelings for this person, even when doing so felt foolish or hopeless. Every time you have shown up authentically in their presence, even when it would have been easier to hide behind a mask. You have been building the courage reserves that will carry you through what comes next. Let me be very clear about something that needs to be said plainly. Waiting for perfect circumstances or perfect words or perfect timing is just another way of hiding from the vulnerability that authentic connection requires. There is no perfect moment coming where everything will feel safe and certain and easy. The perfect moment is whichever moment you decide to stop waiting and start acting. When you choose courage over comfort, truth over safety, possibility over certainty. This does not mean you should be reckless or thoughtless in your approach. It means you should stop using the search for perfection as an excuse to avoid the discomfort of being truly seen. Think about what you would want to know if you were in their position, struggling with the same fears and questions. Would you not want someone to take pity on your struggle and bridge the gap, to extend a hand across the uncertainty and create a connection point where both of you could finally be honest? Now, before we continue to the final part of this message, I need to speak to you again about something important. If you have made it this far in this video, if every word has been landing in your chest like it was written specifically for your situation, then you need to do more than just passively receive this message. You need to become an active participant in the community of people who are choosing courage over fear in their emotional lives. Subscribe to this channel right now, not tomorrow or next week when you remember, but right now, while this feeling of recognition and possibility is fresh in your heart. Make this small commitment to yourself that you are going to surround yourself with messages and reminders that support your choice to live authentically rather than safely. And I want you to do something else that might feel even more vulnerable than subscribing. I want you to go down into the comment section and tell me what is really going on in your heart. Tell me about the person who occupies your thoughts. Describe what stops you from speaking your truth to them. Share what you are feeling right now as you hear this message. But I also want you to tell me what you want to hear more about. What topics and questions are alive in your heart that you wish someone would address? This channel exists to serve you, to help you navigate the complexities of love and connection with courage and wisdom. And I can only do that well if you tell me what you need. Your comment might take 60 seconds to write, but it could be the thing that helps someone else reading it find their own courage. And it will definitely help me create content that actually serves the real needs of real people facing real situations. The conversation between this person and their friend eventually arrived at a place of decision. After all the tears and confessions and questions, after examining every angle of the situation from every possible perspective, the friend offered one final piece of wisdom that should guide your own decision-making process. They said that regret for action taken is almost always easier to live with than regret for action not taken. Because at least when you try and it does not work out the way you hoped, you know you gave it your best effort and you learned something valuable about yourself in the process. But when you never try at all, you are left with the endless torment of wondering what might have been if only you had been braver. You are left with a story that has no ending, a question that never gets answered, a possibility that remains forever in the realm of imagination rather than reality. That kind of regret is far more painful than any temporary embarrassment or disappointment that might come from taking a risk that does not pay off the way you hoped. So here is what the angels are whispering to you right now. The message they have entrusted me to deliver in this exact moment when you are standing at your own crossroads of decision. The person who confessed their feelings about you is waiting just as desperately as you are for someone to be brave enough to break the silence. They are lying awake at night just like you are, analyzing every interaction, looking for signs, talking themselves into and out of action a dozen times a day. You have been given a gift that they do not have, which is knowledge of how they truly feel. And with that gift comes a responsibility to use it wisely. You can choose to pretend you never heard what you heard, to continue the dance of uncertainty and distance, to protect yourself from the vulnerability of speaking first. That is one option. And no one would blame you for taking it, because fear is a powerful force and self-protection is a natural human instinct. But there is another option that requires more courage but offers infinitely more possibility. You can choose to be the one who bridges the gap, who speaks first, who creates the opening that allows truth to finally flow freely between you. Imagine how it will feel to finally release the weight of these unspoken feelings that have been sitting heavy on your chest for so long. Imagine the relief of no longer having to analyze every word and gesture for hidden meaning, no longer having to wonder if you are imagining things or reading too much into innocent interactions. Imagine the freedom of knowing exactly where you stand, even if where you stand is not exactly where you hope to be. Because clarity is always better than confusion, even when clarity comes with temporary disappointment. But imagine even more wonderfully what it would feel like to discover that your courage is met with reciprocal courage, that your vulnerability creates a safe space for their vulnerability, that your willingness to speak first gives them permission to stop hiding too. Imagine the joy of realizing that all this time you were worried about rejection. They were worried about the exact same thing. And both of you were suffering unnecessarily because neither of you could find the courage to speak first. The universe has set the stage perfectly for something beautiful to emerge from this situation. But the universe cannot do the work for you. It can only create opportunities and then wait to see if you will be brave enough to take them. Every single thing that has led you to this moment, every heartache and hope and quiet longing, has been preparing you for this decision. You are not the same person you were before you started caring about this person. Their presence in your life has already changed you in ways both subtle and profound. And now it is time to decide whether you are going to honor that change by acting from your transformed heart, or whether you are going to retreat back into the safety of who you used to be. The transformed version of you knows that love requires courage, that connection demands vulnerability, that beauty only emerges when we are willing to risk the possibility of pain. The old version of you wants to hide and protect and wait for someone else to take the risk first. Which version of yourself are you going to choose to be in this moment that will define the next chapter of your story? In the days immediately ahead, you're going to feel many things. Excitement at the possibility that your feelings might be returned, fear of saying the wrong thing or making the wrong move, impatience to resolve this situation that has occupied so much mental and emotional space for so long. All of these feelings are valid and normal and part of the human experience of navigating love and connection. Do not judge yourself for feeling fear. Fear simply means something important is at stake, something you care about deeply enough that the outcome matters. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward despite the fear, to put one foot in front of the other even when your legs are shaking, to speak even when your voice threatens to break. When the moment comes for this crucial conversation, and it will come soon, whether you plan it consciously or the universe arranges it for you, remember a few important truths. First, authentic vulnerability is magnetic and powerful. It creates a space where the other person feels safe to be vulnerable in return. Second, perfect words do not exist. What matters is the sincere intention behind the words, the honesty of the heart that speaks them. Third, regardless of how the conversation unfolds, the simple act of having it will free you from an enormous weight you did not even realize you were carrying. Heaven has orchestrated this revelation for you today because you are ready, even if you do not feel ready, even if every fiber of your being wants to retreat into the safety of silence. Your soul knows the time has come to cross this threshold, to leave the old chapter where you were a spectator in your own romantic life and enter the new chapter where you are the main actor, the conscious creator of your own love destiny. This transition is never easy. It requires you to abandon the comfort of inaction and accept the temporary discomfort of transformation. But on the other side of that discomfort awaits a version of yourself that is more complete, more courageous, more authentic, someone who knows they can face their deepest fears and survive, someone who knows they deserve a love that does not need to hide in shadows, but can exist in full light. Go forward now with courage, with faith, with the certainty that whatever happens, you are guided, protected, and deeply loved by forces greater than you can see. The angels walk beside you even when you cannot see them, and the entire universe conspires to help you succeed because authentic love is always aligned with the greatest good, always in harmony with the divine plan for your life. This is your moment, your invitation, your chance to step fully into the life and love you have been longing for. Take it,